If you clicked on this video, I want you to stay right where you are, because what I am about to tell you, I have never told anyone all at once, start to finish, in my whole life. My name doesn't matter yet. What matters is that I am 78 years old. I was born Amish. I lived Amish for 77 of those years. And 1 year ago, I walked out of the only world I ever knew, with one suitcase, and I have not been the same woman since. My own children will not answer my letters. They will not answer the phone. But 3 of my grandchildren found me anyway. And what happened next is the reason I am sitting here talking to a camera instead of sitting in my kitchen with my quilting. Before I go any further, I need to ask you for something, and I don't ask for much these days. If this story means something to you, hit that like button right now, before you even finish watching, because it tells me, an old woman who still doesn't fully understand how any of this works, that someone out there is listening. Subscribe too, because I have more to tell in the weeks ahead, more than I could ever fit into one video. And I want to know you. I want to know where in this great big world you are sitting right now, listening to an old Amish grandmother talk about the hardest year of her life. So down in the comments, tell me your city, your country, wherever you are, because it comforts me more than you know to picture faces out there, in living rooms and kitchens and cars, hearing an old woman's story. Now let me start at the beginning, because you cannot understand why I left unless you understand what I was leaving. I was born in the winter of 1947, on a farm in Pennsylvania, in a farmhouse, with no electricity, no telephone, no automobile in the barn, only horses and the sound of my mother's voice calling us in from the cold. I was the 5th of 9 children. My father was a stern man, not a cruel one, but stern in the way that generation of men were stern, because the church expected it, and the community expected it, and he did not know any other way to be a father. My mother was gentler, though she had little room to show it, because there was always bread to bake, always a garden to tend, always another baby coming. I loved her. I loved her the way you love the one soft place in a hard world. We spoke Pennsylvania Dutch at home, and English only when we had to, at the market, or with the English neighbors down the road, the ones we called the English no matter where they were actually from. I went to school in a one-room schoolhouse until the 8th grade, and then my schooling ended, because that is how it was for Amish children, and I did not question it. Because questioning was not something a girl in my community did, not out loud, not even in her own head if she could help it. I was baptized into the church at 19. I want you to understand what that means, because if you were not raised this way, it can sound like just another church service, another Sunday morning. It is not that. Baptism into the Amish church is a vow. It is a covenant you make before God and before your whole community, and it says that you will live by the ordnung, the unwritten rules of the church, for the rest of your life. It says that if you ever leave after that vow, you will be shunned, cut off, and not just by strangers, but by your own mother, your own father, your own brothers and sisters, your own children if you have them. I did not think of it as a trap when I was 19. I thought of it as home. I wept with joy on the day I was baptized. I want you to know that, because I do not want you to think I was always secretly plotting my escape. I was not. I loved my life for most of it. I loved the quiet. I loved the rhythm of the seasons, planting and harvest, canning in the summer, quilting in the winter. I loved singing the old hymns in church, slow and long. The notes stretched out until they did not sound like any music you have ever heard, more like a kind of breathing together as a community. I married a good man named Eli when I was 21. He was not a romantic man, because that was not really our way, but he was steady, and he worked hard, and in the beginning, he was kind to me in his own quiet fashion. We had 6 children together over the next 18 years. 4 of them lived to adulthood. I lost one baby girl to a fever when she was only 2 years old, and I lost a son when he was 19 in an accident with a hay baler that I still cannot speak about without my hands beginning to shake, even now, even after all these years. That kind of grief, in our community, you were not permitted to fall apart from. You were expected to say God's will, and go back to canning the tomatoes the next morning, because the community needed you, and there was no room in the schedule of Amish life for a woman to simply collapse. I tell you this not to make you feel sorry for me, though I suppose some of you might, but because I need you to understand the woman I was before all of this happened. I was not a rebel. I was not an angry young woman with something to prove. I was an old-fashioned wife and mother who prayed every single day, who believed every single thing she was taught, who thought that heaven itself depended on her staying inside the fences of her community until the day she died. That is the woman who, at the age of 77, packed one suitcase and walked away from everything she had ever known. I need you to sit with that for a moment, because it is the whole reason this story matters. It was not a young woman's rebellion. It was an old woman's reckoning. For most of my life, I did not let myself notice the cracks. But looking back now, I can see them, scattered across 4 decades, small moments I pushed down and buried under work and prayer, and the busyness of raising a family. I remember the first crack clearly. I was maybe 30 years old, and my husband Eli's brother, a man named Amos, left the community. He fell in love, they said, with a woman from outside, an English woman, and he chose her over the church. The bishop announced the shunning in front of the whole congregation. I remember sitting on that hard wooden bench, my youngest on my lap, and watching my mother-in-law's face as she was told she could no longer eat at the same table as her own son, could no longer accept a ride in his car, could no longer so much as hand him a cup of coffee without it being considered a sin against the church. She did not cry in that room. Amish women of her generation did not cry in front of the congregation, but I saw her hands, folded in her lap, shaking the whole service, and something in me, some small, quiet voice, whispered a question I was not permitted to ask out loud. What kind of God asks a mother to stop loving her son over a woman he chose to marry? I buried that question so deep I did not hear it again for years. The second crack came when my daughter Ruth was 16. She was going through her rumspringer, the running around years, when Amish teenagers are given a little more freedom before they decide whether to be baptized into the church. Ruth came home late one night, and I could smell that she had been drinking, and I could see in her eyes that something in her wanted out. Wanted more. Wanted a world bigger than the one bordered by our farm and our church district. I sat with her at the kitchen table that night, just the 2 of us, the lantern flickering, and for 1 hour, my daughter told me things I had never let myself think. She told me she wondered what was beyond our county. She told me she wondered why girls were not allowed to question the ministers the way boys sometimes were. She told me she wondered whether God really cared if a woman wore her hair loose or covered, whether he truly measured devotion by the color of a dress or the style of a buggy. I told her to hush, that these were the kind of thoughts the devil put in a young girl's head, and I told her to pray on it. She did end up staying. She was baptized the following spring. She married a good Amish man, and she has lived her whole life within our community. But I have never forgotten that conversation, because some part of me, sitting there in that kitchen, agreed with every word she said, even as I told her to be quiet. The years went on. I raised my children. I buried a son and a daughter. I cared for my aging parents until they passed. I became a grandmother, and then, slowly, a great-grandmother. Eli grew older and quieter and, if I am honest, harder, not cruel. I want to be fair to him. He was never a violent man. But he grew rigid in a way that frightened me sometimes, the way certain old men do when they feel the world changing around them faster than they can control it. He began to police the smallest things, the length of a hem, the placement of a pin in a bonnet, whether a grandchild's toy was too worldly. I watched him grow smaller and more afraid year by year, even as the community around us praised him for his devotion. And I began to notice something in myself I did not have words for yet. Exhaustion. Not the ordinary exhaustion of hard work, which I had carried my whole life without complaint, but a deeper exhaustion, a weariness of the soul, from decades of swallowing every question, every doubt, every small rebellion of the heart, and calling it faithfulness. The third crack, and I think this might be the one that truly began to break the dam, came about 10 years ago, when my granddaughter Sarah, my son David's daughter, left the community. She was 22. She did not run off in secret, the way some young people do. She sat the whole family down. She explained her reasons calmly. She said she loved us. She said she believed in God still, just not in the way our church demanded, and she left to go to college in the English world. David, my own son, stood up from that table and told his daughter that as of that day, she was dead to him. Those were his exact words, and I have never been able to forget them. Dead to him. His own daughter, standing right in front of him, breathing, weeping, and he called her dead. I watched my son do to his child exactly what had been done to families for generations in our community, and something in me broke that day, though I did not act on it for another decade. I hugged Sarah in secret before she left, out behind the barn where David could not see, and I whispered to her that I loved her and that I did not agree with what her father had said, though I made her promise never to repeat that to anyone. She kept that promise for 10 years. I think about that a great deal now. How many of us were keeping secrets like that inside our own hearts, hidden behind our aprons and our bonnets, agreeing quietly with things we were never allowed to say out loud. Eli passed away 2 years ago, in the springtime, of a heart that simply gave out one morning while he was hitching the horse to the plow. I grieved him. I want to be honest about that too, because this is not a story where I paint my husband as a villain and myself as an innocent victim. We had built a life together, a hard life, but a real one. And when he died, I felt the ground shift beneath me in a way I had not expected. For 56 years, my entire identity had been built around being his wife, being a mother in his household, being a woman inside the structure he and the church had built around me. And suddenly, at 76 years old, I was a widow, and for the first time since I was a young girl, I had time. Not much of it, because widows in our community are quickly folded into the care of their children, expected to move into a small addition on a son's or daughter's property, a dowdy horse, and to remain useful, watching grandchildren, quilting, cooking, but never truly alone with her own thoughts. Still, in those quiet hours before the household woke, sitting in the dark with a cup of coffee, I began to think, really think. In a way I had trained myself for 6 decades not to do. I thought about Amish, shunned all those years ago for loving a woman the church did not approve of. And dying, I later learned, without ever being permitted a Christian burial by our people, though other more forgiving preachers said the right over him anyway. I thought about my daughter Ruth, sitting at that kitchen table at 16, asking questions I never let her finish. I thought about Sarah, my granddaughter, called dead by her own father while she stood breathing in front of him. And I thought about my own life, and I asked myself, for the first time with my whole heart open and unguarded, a single question. Did I actually believe, in my bones, that God required all of this? The shunning, the silence, the way a mother could be commanded by her church to treat her living child as though he had died. The way women's voices were smaller than men's voices in matters of the church, always had been, always would be if things continued as they were. I sat in that dark kitchen and I wept, quietly, so as not to wake my son David's family sleeping above me in the farmhouse where I now lived in the little attached addition. And I realized that I had spent 76 years believing something I had never once actually chosen for myself. I had been born into it, and I had never truly examined it. Not because I was foolish, but because examining it had never, not once, been permitted. It took me another full year after that morning to work up the courage to do anything about what I had realized. I want you to understand that leaving the Amish, at 77 years old, as a widow, with no education past the 8th grade, no driver's license, very little money of my own, and a lifetime of training to believe that the outside world was full of sin and danger, is not a decision anyone makes lightly or quickly. I had no internet. I had no phone of my own. Everything I learned about the world beyond our fences, in that final year, I learned in secret, from an English neighbor woman named Carol, who ran the farm stand down the road. A kind woman in her 60s who had befriended me over many years of selling her my quilts and my jams. I began, very carefully, very quietly, to tell Carol some of what was in my heart. She never pushed me. She never told me what to do. She simply listened, the way almost no one in my community had ever truly listened to me, without waiting for her turn to correct me or remind me of scripture. She told me that if I ever needed anything, anything at all, she would help me. No questions asked and no judgment given. I carried that promise around in my chest for months like a smooth stone, turning it over and over, not sure if I would ever actually need it. What finally pushed me over the edge, if you want the honest truth, was a Sunday in early spring, about 13 months ago now. Our bishop, a man I had known my whole life, stood up during the members' meeting and announced that a young man in our district, only 20 years old, had been placed under the ban, the shunning, for the crime of owning a cell phone he used to text an English girl he had fallen for. I watched that boy's mother across the room, and I saw on her face the exact same grief I had seen on my mother-in-law's face nearly 50 years before, over Amos. Nothing had changed. 50 years, and nothing had changed. That same machine, grinding up young hearts and old mothers' hearts along with them, all in the name of a purity and an obedience that I no longer, in the deepest part of my soul, believed came from God at all. I believe in God still. I want to be very clear about that. I have never once stopped believing in God. But I stopped believing on that Sunday morning that God was the one demanding all of this suffering. I believe now that some of it was simply men, protecting their own power and calling it holiness. I went home from that meeting, and I did not sleep that night. I lay awake next to the small quilt I had made for my newest great-grandchild, and I made my decision. I would leave. Not out of anger, though I was angry, and not out of some desire to shame my family, but because I had realized, at 77 years old, that I did not want to die, having never once lived a single day as a woman who had chosen her own life. I wanted, before I died, to know what it felt like to make one decision. Just one. Entirely my own. Answerable to no bishop, no husband, no ordnung, only to God and my own conscience. I want to tell you about the day I left, because I have replayed it in my mind every single day for the past year, and I do not think the details will ever stop being sharp and clear to me. The way certain days simply refuse to fade no matter how much time passes. It was a Tuesday. I remember it was a Tuesday, because Tuesdays were wash day, and I remember feeling a strange, almost funny thought as I packed my one suitcase, that I would not be there to hang the wash on the line that afternoon, and some small, dutiful part of me worried about that, even as I was leaving my entire life behind. That is how deep the training goes. Even in the middle of the biggest decision of my life, a part of me was worried about the laundry. I packed only one suitcase, an old hard-sided one that had belonged to my mother, because I did not want to take anything that would look, to anyone watching, like I was leaving for good. I packed 2 dresses, my Bible, a small photograph of Eli and me on our wedding day, which was not really a proper photograph since we do not believe in photographs, but a simple pencil sketch a traveling artist had once done of us for a small fee. And I packed the half-finished quilt I had been working on for my newest great-grandchild, because I could not bear to leave it unfinished. I left before dawn, while David's family was still asleep in the main house, and I walked the 1.5 miles down the road, in the dark, in my Amish dress and my bonnet, my heart pounding so hard I thought surely it would wake the whole county, to Carol's farm stand, where she had told me, months before, that she would be there for me if I ever called on her. Carol was already awake when I arrived, sitting on her porch with a lamp lit, as though she somehow knew, though I had given her no specific warning, that it would be that particular morning. She took one look at my face and my suitcase, and she did not ask a single question. She simply stood up, took my suitcase from my hand, and said, "Come on in, honey. Let's get you some coffee." I sat in her kitchen, an English kitchen, with electric lights and a refrigerator humming in the corner, sounds and sights I had seen before on rare occasions, but never actually lived inside. And I cried for almost an hour, not because I regretted what I had done, but because the weight of 77 years was finally being set down, and grief and relief, I have learned, can feel almost exactly the same in the body. Carol helped me in every way, an old woman leaving everything she knows could possibly need help. She helped me get identification, since I had none. Not even a birth certificate that the English world would easily recognize. She helped me apply for the small amount of assistance a woman my age, with no work history, is entitled to. She let me stay in her guest room for the first 4 months, and she never once made me feel like a burden, though I certainly felt like one. Every single day, an old woman who did not know how to use a telephone, who was frightened of her own reflection in a television screen, who had never in her life ridden in a car without a healthy fear of the speed of it. Carol was patient with me the way I imagine God himself must be patient with all of us, and I will be grateful to her until the day I die. The hardest part of that first day, harder even than the crying, was writing the letter. I sat at Carol's kitchen table that same afternoon, and I wrote a letter to my son David and his wife, and copies to my other living children, Ruth and my son Jacob, explaining as gently and as honestly as I could why I had left. I told them I loved them. I told them I loved God still. I told them I was not leaving because I hated our people or our way of life, but because I had reached the end of my own life needing to know, just once, what it was to choose something for myself. I told them where I was staying, and I told them my door, wherever I ended up, would always be open to them. I never got a reply. Not one. Not to that first letter, and not to any of the 11 letters I have written since. One almost every month for the past year. Each one a little more searching than the last. Asking about the grandchildren. Asking about the harvest. Asking, near the end of every single letter, if there was any way at all, that they might find it in their hearts to simply talk to me. My son David, the same son who once told his own daughter Sarah she was dead to him, has now applied that same sentence to his own mother. I have called the phone shanty near their property, the little shed with the community telephone that Amish families sometimes share, 4 times over this past year. Twice, no one answered. Once, my daughter-in-law answered, heard my voice, and hung up without a single word. And once, just once, my son David himself answered, and I heard his voice, the same voice I sang lullabies to 60 years ago, and I said, "David, it's your mother." And there was a silence on that line so long and so heavy that I could hear my own heart beating in my ears. And then he simply said, "We have nothing to say to you," and the line went dead. I sat on Carol's porch swing after that call for almost 3 hours, not moving, not crying anymore, just sitting. An old woman who had given 56 years of her life raising a good, hard-working, faithful son, now cut off from him as completely as if I truly had died. I want to tell you now about the grandchildren, because this is the part of the story that has kept me going. The part that reminds me God has not abandoned me even when my own children have. I have 11 grandchildren in total, spread across my 4 living children's families, ranging in age from 34 down to 9 years old. Most of them I have not heard a single word from, because most of them are still young enough, or obedient enough, or perhaps simply frightened enough to follow their parents' lead in shunning me completely. But 3 of them found me, and the way each one of them found me tells you almost everything you need to know about the particular courage each of these young people carries inside them. The first was Sarah, David's daughter, the very same granddaughter who left our community 10 years before I did, the one whose father told her she was dead to him at that kitchen table. Sarah is 32 years old now, married to an English man named Tom, with 2 little children of her own, living about 90 minutes away from where I grew up. Sarah heard about my leaving through the strange, quiet network that exists among people who have left Amish communities, a kind of underground grapevine of ex-Amish men and women scattered across several counties who look out for one another because they know better than anyone what it costs to leave. Someone who knew Carol had mentioned an elderly Amish widow who had recently left the Fisher family's district, and Sarah, hearing the name Fisher, which is my family's name, called Carol's farm, stand directly to ask if it might be her own grandmother. I will never forget the day Carol handed me the telephone and said, very gently, "Someone named Sarah is asking for you." I had not spoken to Sarah since that day behind the barn, 10 years earlier, when I had hugged her in secret and told her I loved her and made her promise never to tell. I picked up that phone with hands that would not stop shaking, and I heard my granddaughter's voice, grown up now, a grown woman's voice, instead of the frightened 22-year-old I remembered. And she said, "Mammy, is that really you?" Mammy is what my grandchildren have always called me, our word for grandmother, and hearing that word again after everything, after all those months of silence from my own children, undid me completely. I could not speak for almost a full minute. Sarah waited. She did not rush me. She simply waited on that line, saying my name softly every so often. Mammy, I'm here. Take your time, until I found my voice again. Sarah drove out to Carol's farm the very next weekend. She brought her husband Tom and her 2 children, my great-grandchildren, who I had never once been permitted to meet, because David had cut Sarah off so completely all those years ago that even news of her having children never properly reached me. Only faint whispers I was never allowed to ask about directly. I stood on Carol's porch and watched a car pull into the driveway, and out stepped a woman I recognized instantly, despite the 10 years and the English clothes and the modern haircut, because some things about a person's face never change. Not really. And Sarah actually ran, across that gravel driveway and threw her arms around me. And we stood there together for I do not know how long, both of us crying, while her husband held their 2 children back for a moment, giving a space, before he brought them forward too, a little boy of 6 and a little girl of 4. My great-grandchildren, meeting their mammy's mother for the very first time in their lives. I got down on my knees, right there in the gravel. My old knees that do not bend the way they used to, and I hugged those 2 children as though I could somehow make up, in one single embrace, for every single year of their lives I had missed. The second grandchild who found me was Sarah's younger cousin, Anna. My daughter Ruth's daughter, 26 years old. Anna is still technically a member of an Amish community, though a more moderate one than the district Ruth and I came from. One that allows for a bit more flexibility. And Anna reached out not by coming in person, since she risked serious consequences from her own church district and her own parents if she were discovered, but through letters smuggled to me through Sarah, who had become, almost immediately after finding me, a kind of bridge between me and any family member brave enough to reach across the divide. Anna's letters were careful at first, formal almost, testing the waters, asking simple questions about my health and my new living situation. But over the months, as she realized I was not going to judge her for staying, or shame her for the questions she was quietly asking herself about her own life within the church, her letters grew longer, more honest, more like the letters of a granddaughter who desperately wanted to know her grandmother as a full and real person, and not just as the elderly relative who was no longer allowed to be spoken of in her parents' house. Anna wrote to me once, in a letter I have kept and read so many times the folds are beginning to wear thin, that she used to lie awake at night as a teenager, wondering whether it was truly wicked to wonder about the world beyond our fences, the way she had heard I once wondered, though she was never supposed to have heard that story at all, since it was one of those family secrets passed along in hushed voices between girls and women, never meant for the ears of fathers or bishops. She wrote that watching me leave, at 77 years old, after a lifetime of what looked from the outside like perfect obedience, had given her a strange kind of permission to admit to herself that her own doubts did not automatically make her a bad person, or a bad Amish woman, or a bad granddaughter. I do not know what Anna will ultimately decide to do with her life. I have told her, in every letter I have sent back, that I love her exactly as she is, whether she stays in the church her whole life or whether she someday chooses to leave, and that the door of whatever home I have will always, always be open to her, without a single condition attached to it. Which is more, I am sorry to say, than my own children have ever offered me. The third grandchild, and the one whose visit broke my heart open in an entirely different way than the other two, was my son Jacob's boy, a young man named Samuel, only 19 years old, still living at home, still fully within the community, not yet baptized, still in the years of his Rumspringa. Samuel showed up at Carol's farm stand one afternoon in an English friend's car, having found out where I was through, of all people, Sarah's little boy, my great-grandson, who apparently mentioned meeting his great-great-grandmother to a cousin at a family gathering, and word slowly traveled, the way it always does in families, even families that are trying very hard to keep secrets from one another. Samuel stood in Carol's driveway that day looking terrified, glancing back at his friend's car every few seconds as though he expected the sky itself to fall on him for being there. He told me his father, my son Jacob, did not know he had come, and would be furious, possibly would place him under some manner of household discipline if he ever found out. But Samuel told me that he had to see me, just once, because he remembered me from before I left. Remembered me slipping him extra pieces of shoofly pie when his mother wasn't looking. Remembered me singing to him when he was small. And he said he could not stand the thought of the whole family pretending I had simply ceased to exist. We sat together on Carol's porch for almost 3 hours that afternoon, and Samuel asked me question after question. Not really about leaving, but about me. About what I was like as a young woman. About whether I had ever been afraid. About whether I thought God was angry with me. I told him the truth, that I did not know for certain what God thought of any of us, but that I had come, in my old age, to believe that a God who is truly good could not possibly be smaller or crueler than the love a grandmother feels for her grandson, sitting on a porch terrified of being caught, but there anyway, because his heart demanded it. Before Samuel left that day, he hugged me, quickly, almost furtively, the way you might hug someone in a place you were not supposed to be. And he said, "Mammy, I don't know what I believe yet, about any of it, but I'm glad I came." I have not seen Samuel since, though I have received 2 more secret visits from him in the months since, always brief, always anxious, but always, unmistakably, an act of love from a boy who could very easily have simply let the silence of his father and his community make the decision for him. I want to talk now about what my life actually looks like today, 1 year later, because I think it is easy, when you hear a story like mine, to imagine either a tragedy or a triumph. And the truth, as it usually is, sits somewhere quieter in between those two things. I still live with Carol, though we have talked about finding me a small place of my own nearby. Something simple, something I could afford on the little assistance I receive, and the money I have slowly begun to earn selling my quilts, which, it turns out, English women will pay quite a lot of money for. More than I ever imagined. More than I was ever paid within my own community for the very same work. I find that strange sometimes, that the outside world values the work of my hands more highly than the world I came from ever did, though I try not to dwell on the bitterness of that thought for too long, because bitterness, I have learned, makes a very poor companion for an old woman trying to build a new life. I have learned to do things this past year that most people my age in the English world take entirely for granted. I have learned to use a telephone properly, not just to answer it, but to actually call someone, to leave what they call a voicemail message, which felt like speaking into an empty room for the longest time until I got used to it. Carol's granddaughter, a patient young woman named Becca, taught me how to use a computer. Just a little. Enough to write these words I am sharing with you now. Enough to look at photographs people send me. I have ridden in an aeroplane, if you can believe that. An 80-year-old woman, practically. who had never so much as ridden in a car until she was 77, flying across the sky in a metal tube to visit Sarah's husband's family for Christmas. And I wept when I looked out that little window and saw the clouds beneath me, because I thought of all the sunrises and sunsets I had witnessed from the ground my entire life, never once imagining I would someday look down upon them instead. I have also learned things that are much harder to learn, things that have nothing to do with technology or travel. I have learned what it feels like to grieve people who are still alive. There is a particular kind of grief in this, different from the grief of a death, because with death, however painful, there is at least a shared understanding, a shared ritual, a community that gathers around you and says, "Together, this is a loss, we will carry it together." But when your own children choose silence, when they treat you as though you have died while you are very much alive and writing them letters every single month, there is no ritual for that grief. There is no one who gathers around you and says, "We understand. We will carry this with you," because most people, even kind people, even people who love you, do not fully understand what it is to be shunned by your own family while your heart is still beating in your chest. I have prayed about this more than I have prayed about almost anything else in my life, including more than I prayed about the decision to leave itself. I have asked God, many nights, lying awake in Carol's guest room, whether I was wrong to leave, whether my children's silence is some form of justice for what they see as my betrayal of everything I raised them to believe. And I want to tell you honestly, because I promised myself when I started making these videos that I would not simply tell you the parts of the story that make me look wise or brave, that some nights I still do not know the answer to that question. Some nights I still wonder if I made a terrible mistake, if I traded the respect and closeness of my children for a freedom that, in my old age, with limited years left to enjoy it, was not worth the trade. And then other nights, usually after I have received a letter from Anna, or a phone call from Sarah, or thought about Samuel's frightened, hopeful face on that porch, I feel something closer to peace, a sense that even if my own children cannot yet find their way back to me, something true and good has still come from my leaving, something that is quietly working its way through the next generation of this family, even if I never live to see where it fully leads. I want to speak for a moment to anyone watching this who might be going through something similar in their own family, on either side of a story like mine. If you are a parent or a grandparent who has been cut off, shunned, or simply ignored by someone you raised and loved, whether inside a community like mine or in any other family situation entirely, I want you to know that your grief is real, and it deserves to be honored, even when there is no funeral, no headstone, no formal ritual to mark it. Write the letters anyway, even if they are never answered. Make the phone calls anyway, even if the line goes dead, not because I can promise you it will ever change anything. I cannot promise you that. My own son David has still not spoken to me after a full year of my letters, but because the door should always be left open on your side, regardless of what the other person chooses to do with that open door. I have found a strange kind of peace simply in knowing that I have never once, not for a single day since I left, closed my door to my children, even as they have closed theirs to me. And if you are watching this and you are the child or grandchild in a situation like this one, the one who has perhaps cut off a parent or a grandparent over some decision they made, some belief they hold, some way of living you cannot understand or agree with, I want to gently ask you to consider this. Somewhere in this world, there is very likely an old woman or an old man lying awake at night, thinking of you, missing you, wondering whether you are safe and whether you are happy, even if they have made choices you cannot forgive them for. I am not telling you what to do with your own particular situation, because every family story carries its own weight and its own history that I cannot know from the outside. But I am telling you, from the other side of this particular kind of silence, that it costs something enormous to be shut out of your own children's lives, and if there is even a small crack of doorway left open somewhere in your heart, even just enough for a letter, even just enough for one phone call on a birthday, it might mean more to the person on the other side of that silence than you could possibly imagine sitting where you are right now. I think often about the bishop's meeting that finally pushed me to leave, about that young man shunned for a cell phone and a text message to a girl he loved, and I think about how strange it is that an entire system built, in its own understanding, around love and obedience to God, could so easily become a machine for cutting people off from one another. I do not say this to condemn my whole community, because there was so much good in that life too, so much genuine community, genuine hard work, genuine faith, that I still hold on to in my own quiet way even now, sitting here in Carol's kitchen with electric lights humming above me. I simply say it because I think every family, every community, whether Amish or English or anything else entirely, has to ask itself honestly whether the rules it enforces are actually serving love, or whether, somewhere along the way, the rules themselves became more important than the people they were meant to protect. Sarah asked me a few months ago, sitting at Carol's kitchen table, with her 2 children playing on the floor beside us, whether I regretted the 56 years I spent as an Amish wife and mother, given everything that has happened since. And I told her the truth. The same truth I want to leave you with today. I do not regret those 56 years. I loved much of that life, genuinely and deeply, and I do not believe the entire system is evil, simply because parts of it caused real harm to real people, including to me and to my own family. But I also do not regret leaving, even knowing the cost, even knowing that my own son will not speak to me, even knowing that I may very well die without ever hearing his voice on that phone line again, except to tell me once more that we have nothing to say to each other. Because for 1 year now, for the first time in 78 years of life, I have been a woman who chose her own path, who examined her own beliefs, who decided for herself, with God and her own conscience, what kind of life was worth living in the years she has left. And whatever else that costs me, I would not trade that back for anything, not even for my son's voice on the other end of that phone. Let me tell you what an ordinary day looks like for me now, because I think it might surprise you how simple, how almost unremarkable my new life actually is, despite everything it took to get here. I still wake before dawn, out of 80 years of habit more than necessity, and for a long while after I first arrived at Carol's, I would lie there in the dark waiting for the sound of the rooster, waiting for the weight of a day's chores to settle onto my shoulders the way it always had, milking to be done, bread to be started, children to be roused from their beds. It took months before my body understood that none of that was required of me anymore, that I could simply lie there in the quiet and watch the gray light come up through the curtains, and that no one, not one single soul, was waiting on me to begin the machinery of another Amish morning. I still make coffee the old way, on the stove, though Carol has a little electric machine that does it for you, because there is a comfort in the ritual of it, in the small blue flame and the smell of the percolator, one of the few threads I have kept from my old life on purpose. Not out of necessity, but out of love for what it reminds me of. I sit on Carol's porch most mornings, in a rocking chair she bought specially for me when I moved in, a small kindness that meant more to me than she probably ever realized. And I watch the sun come up over her fields. And I pray, the same prayers I have prayed my whole life. Because leaving the Amish did not mean leaving God. Whatever some of my old community might believe about me now, I still believe in the same Jesus I was raised to believe in. I have simply stopped believing that loving him requires cutting off my own flesh and blood over a bonnet, or a phone, or a decision to marry outside the fence. In the afternoons, I quilt, the same work I have done with my hands since I was a small girl learning at my own mother's knee. And it is strange and wonderful to me that this one skill, born entirely out of my old Amish life, has become the very thing that sustains me financially in my new one. Carol helped me set up what they call an online shop, though I confess I understand very little of how it actually works. Only that Becca, Carol's granddaughter, photographs the finished quilts, and somehow people from all over the country, and even a woman once from a country called Australia, order them and pay me real money for work I once did, simply because it was expected of every Amish woman in her household. I cried the first time a payment came through, not because of the money itself, though the money matters a great deal to a woman my age with no pension and no husband's estate to rely on, but because it was the first time in my entire life that my work had been chosen and paid for by someone with absolutely no obligation to me whatsoever, only genuine appreciation for what my hands had made. Some evenings, Anna's letters arrive, and I want to tell you about the most recent one, because I think it says something important about where this whole story might be heading, though I cannot know for certain. Anna wrote to me last month that she has begun, very quietly, attending a different kind of church some weekends, a small Mennonite congregation 2 towns over that some of her English friends attend, one that keeps much of the plain and simple faith she was raised with, the modesty, the community, the seriousness about scripture, but does not practice the same total shunning that our stricter Amish district practices. She wrote that she has not told her parents, that she does not know if she will ever formally leave the Amish church the way I did, but that meeting these people, seeing that it is possible to hold on to a deep and genuine faith without the machinery of complete separation from anyone who questions or leaves, has given her something she called, in her own words, room to breathe, that I did not know I was allowed to want. I read that letter 3 times before I could set it down, because I recognized, in her careful, searching words, the exact same room to breathe I found for myself only after 77 years of not knowing I was allowed to want it either. Samuel visited again about 6 weeks ago, this time bringing along a girl he has been seeing, an English girl named Beth, sweet and nervous, clearly aware of how much courage it must have taken Samuel to bring her, of all people, to meet his shunned grandmother. We sat together for a couple of hours, and I watched this young man, only 19, carrying a burden that no boy his age should have to carry, trying to figure out whether he can build a life with this girl he loves, while somehow not entirely losing his family, his community, his whole world. The way I lost mine, the way Sarah lost her father, the way Anna might someday lose everything she has ever known. I did not tell Samuel what to do. I have learned, this past year, that the very worst thing anyone ever did to me was tell me what to believe and what to choose. And I refuse to become, in my old age, another voice, doing the very same thing to the young people who have shown me more love and courage than my own children have managed to show me. I simply told him that whatever he chooses, whatever it costs him, my door will remain open, exactly as it has remained open to his father, my son Jacob, who is still, as of the day I am recording this, never once picked up a telephone to call his own mother. I want to say something now about forgiveness, because I know some of you watching this might be wondering whether I have forgiven my children for their silence. And I think the honest answer is more complicated than a simple yes or no. I do not carry hatred toward David, or Jacob, or my daughter Ruth, who has also chosen silence. Though her daughter Anna writes to me in secret, I understand, in a way that perhaps only someone raised exactly as I was raised could understand, the enormous weight of fear and duty and community pressure that sits on their shoulders. The same weight that once sat on mine for 77 years before I finally set it down. I do not believe my children are cruel people. I believe they are frightened people, doing what an entire lifetime of teaching has told them is the only righteous response to a mother who broke her sacred vow. I forgive them for that, or at least, I am working every single day toward forgiving them for that. Because I do not want to spend whatever years I have left carrying bitterness toward the children I raised and loved with everything I had. But forgiveness, I have learned this past year, does not mean waiting quietly by the phone, hoping it will ring, putting my whole life on hold until my children decide they are ready to speak to me again. Forgiveness means I can hold both of these truths at once. The truth that I love my children and grieve their absence every single day. And the truth that I am also, for the first time in my entire life, building something that belongs entirely to me. A life, small as it is, quilted together out of Carol's kindness, and Sarah's phone calls, and Anna's secret letters, and Samuel's terrified, beautiful courage. And I refuse to let my children's silence be the only thing that defines whatever years I have left on this earth. I think, in the end, if I had to boil down everything I have learned this past year into a single lesson, an old woman's lesson, offered to whoever is watching this, whatever your age, whatever your own family looks like, it would be this. It is never too late to become the author of your own life, even if you are 77 years old. Even if every single day of the 77 years that came before was written by someone else's hand, your father's hand, your husband's hand, your bishop's hand, your community's hand. I spent 77 years believing that a good woman's story was always written by other people, and that her only job was to accept it gracefully. And I do not say that with bitterness toward the good, real love that also existed inside that life. Because there was so much love there too. Real love. Love I still carry with me every single day. But I also believe now, with my whole heart, that God did not create any one of us, man or woman, young or old, Amish or English, or anything else entirely, simply to live out someone else's story from beginning to end, without ever once being permitted to ask whether it was the story we ourselves would have chosen. I do not know how much time I have left. I am 78 years old, and my own mother passed at 81, my father at 79, so by the arithmetic of my own family's history, I may have only a handful of years left to me, perhaps less. I think about that every single day, and I think about my son David, and my son Jacob, and my daughter Ruth, and I wonder, honestly and painfully, whether any of them will find their way to me before I am gone. Whether one of them will someday pick up that phone the way Sarah did, the way I still hope, every single morning when I wake up in Carol's guest room, that this might finally be the day. I have not given up on that hope, and I do not intend to give up on it, not for as many years as God gives me left on this earth. But I have also learned, this past year, that I cannot make my own peace, my own healing, my own remaining years of life, entirely dependent on whether or when that hope is ever fulfilled. I have to build something real and true and good with the days I have, regardless of whether my children ever walk back through that door. Because Sarah and Anna and Samuel have already shown me, in their own different and courageous ways, that love does not always travel in the direction the rulebook says it should, and sometimes the truest, bravest love in a family skips right over the generation that is too frightened to give it, and lands instead in the hearts of grandchildren who were somehow never taught to be quite so afraid. If you have made it this far with me, I want to thank you genuinely from the bottom of an old woman's heart, because sharing this story has not been easy for me. I am not naturally a woman who talks about herself. We were never raised to seek attention or to think our own individual stories mattered more than the community's story. And every single video I make like this one costs me something. Some old, deep instinct that tells me I am being prideful, being selfish, being too worldly. Simply by sitting here telling you about my own life, instead of quietly enduring it in silence the way the women of my community always have. But I have come to believe that maybe, just maybe, my story, painful as parts of it are, might reach someone else out there who is sitting in their own version of that dark kitchen I once sat in, wondering whether they are allowed to ask the questions they have never let themselves ask, wondering whether it is too late, at whatever age they happen to become the author of their own life for the very first time. So before you go, I want to ask you again for the things I asked you at the very beginning of this video, because they truly do mean the world to a woman like me, still learning how any of this works. If this story touched you, if any part of my 78 years found its way into your own heart today, please take just a moment and press that like button, because it helps more people find this story. And I have come, this past year, to believe deeply in the power of stories, finding the people who need them. Please subscribe as well, because I am not finished telling you everything. There is so much more I have not yet shared, about my childhood, about Eli, about the particular details of Amish life that most of you have never had the chance to hear from someone who actually lived it. And I intend to keep sharing, video by video, for as long as I am able, and as long as you are willing to listen. And please, I ask this most of all, leave me a comment down below and tell me where in this world you are watching from. I have lived my entire life within a few square miles of a single Pennsylvania county, and now, somehow, in the strangest turn of my strange new life, I have the chance to hear from people scattered across this entire earth, and I find that almost more miraculous than the airplane ride that first showed me the clouds from above. Tell me your city, your country. Tell me a little about your own family if you would like to. Tell me whether any part of my story reminded you of your own. I read every single comment Becca helps me find, and I promise you, an old woman sitting on a porch in Pennsylvania, that your words reach me, and they matter to me. More than you could possibly know. Thank you for sitting with me today, for letting an old Amish grandmother tell you her story, start to finish, for what I believe is the very first time out loud, all in one piece. I will see you in the next video, and until then, may whatever family you have, whatever shape it takes, whatever silences it carries, find its way, someday, back toward love. I mean that with my whole heart. Whatever it costs you, whatever fear stands in the way, leave the door open a little longer than feels comfortable, because you never truly know which knock, on which quiet morning, might turn out to be the one that changes absolutely everything.